Thanksgiving is officially at Mom's this year. 28 people. She's used to doing it. That was the message my son Daniel sent to our family group chat on a Tuesday morning, as if my home were a church hall with a sign-up sheet taped to the door. I was sitting at my kitchen table in my robe, drinking coffee that had already gone lukewarm. The November light was coming through the lace curtains, pale and soft, the way it always did in that room. On the counter, I had 2 slices of bread waiting for the toaster. In the cabinet across from me sat Paul's cranberry glass serving bowl, the one we had used every Thanksgiving for nearly 40 years. And beside my coffee cup was a folded paper from the airline. Boston to Lisbon. Departure. The morning before Thanksgiving. I read Daniel's message twice. Not because I did not understand it the first time, but because sometimes disrespect arrives dressed up as convenience, and it takes your heart a moment to recognize it. Before I could decide whether to answer, the replies started coming in. Rebecca, my daughter-in-law, wrote, "I'll send the seating chart later. Maggie, don't worry, I've already thought through the photos." My nephew asked if there would be enough room for the kids to sleep over. Daniel's cousin wanted to know if I was still making sweet potatoes, the old way. Then Rebecca added, "Maybe we skip those dark red dishes this year? They look a little dated in pictures." I looked up at the cabinet again. That bowl had been Paul's anniversary gift to me when we were young and counting every dollar. He had wrapped it himself in newspaper because we could not afford proper gift paper. Every Thanksgiving after that, he placed it in the center of the table like it was something precious. To Rebecca, it was dated. To Daniel, I was used to doing it. To everyone else, my silence meant yes. I picked up the pen beside the grocery pad and wrote one number on the paper. 28. Then I underlined it once. I did not cry. I did not call Daniel. I did not type a long message explaining that my house was still mine and my body was not a holiday machine. I simply folded the Lisbon confirmation, placed it inside the blue folder, and whispered to my empty kitchen, "Not this year." My phone kept speaking for everyone else. By 9:30, the little grey bubbles were stacking up one after another. My sister-in-law asked if she should bring rolls, or if I was making my usual. Daniel's cousin wanted to know whether the driveway could fit 6 cars if people parked close. One of Rebecca's friends, a woman I had only met twice, wrote that her twins were fine sleeping anywhere, as if my guest room had already been assigned to her children. Someone asked about pumpkin pie. Someone else asked if I still had that folding table in the basement. Nobody asked if I was all right with any of it. I let the phone sit there on the table while I rinsed my coffee cup. I washed it slowly, more carefully than it needed to be washed. At my age, you learn that doing one ordinary thing with steady hands can keep your heart from running ahead of you. Then Daniel called. His name lit up the screen, and for 1 second, I considered letting it ring. But I answered. "Morning, Mom," he said, bright as a man who had already won an argument no one knew they were having. "You saw the messages?" I saw them. Good. I figured we should get ahead of it this year. Rebecca's trying to make it easier on everybody. Easier on everybody. I looked around my kitchen. The counters I would scrub. The floors I would mop. The groceries I would buy. The chairs I would drag from the basement one by one. The bathrooms I would clean before they came, and again after they left. "That's thoughtful," I said. He did not hear the space between the words. "Mum, it'll be easier if we just keep things the way they've always been." There it was, the whole problem, laid gently on my table like a folded napkin. I was not being invited into a decision. I was being informed of my assignment. Still, I did not correct him. Not yet. I had learned that people show you more when they think you are too quiet to notice. And Daniel, my only son, had just shown me exactly how little he remembered about why Thanksgiving mattered in that house at all. Thanksgiving had never been about the turkey to me. It was about the sound of Paul clearing his throat while he tried to carve it neatly, even though one leg always gave him trouble. It was about the smell of sage and butter in the kitchen before sunrise. It was about children running down the hallway in socks, cousins arguing over who got the corner piece of cornbread, and my husband standing at the sink with his sleeves rolled up. Pretending he did not know, I saw him eating scraps from the cutting board. My name is Margaret Whitaker, though most people call me Maggie. I was 72 that year, old enough to know when people were being kind, and old enough to know when they were only being polite. I had worked 34 years as a school librarian. I knew the names of children who could barely reach the counter when they first came in, and I watched some of them grow tall enough to bring their own children back. I believed in quiet rooms, careful words, and giving people a little more patience than they deserved. Paul and I bought our house in 1984. It was not grand. 3 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen, and a maple tree out front that dropped leaves faster than we could rake them. But it was ours. We painted the walls ourselves. Paul refinished the dining table in the garage one summer, sanding it until his hands were raw. He said a family table ought to be strong enough to hold laughter, elbows, bills, and bad news. For years, that table did. Every Thanksgiving, Paul placed the cranberry glass bowl in the center before anyone arrived. He always said, "There, now it looks like your table." I would act like he was being silly, but I loved him for remembering. We had planned Lisbon for our 35th anniversary. Paul bought a small travel guide and circled places in blue ink. He wanted to hear fado music in a little restaurant and see the tiled buildings near the water. I wanted to walk somewhere no one needed me for supper. Then Daniel's business hit trouble. There were bills, stress, a baby on the way, and tears on my son's face. He had opened a small contracting office the year before, and one bad job had left him owing more than he could admit without shaking. So we postponed the trip. Next year, Paul said. But next year became doctor visits, then treatments, then a chair beside a hospital bed. After Paul died, Thanksgiving did not disappear. It only got heavier. The same people came. The same dishes were expected. The same table had to be set. But fewer hands helped carry anything. And somewhere along the way, the tradition Paul and I built with love became something my family thought I owed them. Once a family decides you owe them something, they rarely announce it all at once. It comes in small pieces. After Paul passed, Daniel started calling more often, which I welcomed at first. A widow's house can get very still after supper. I was grateful to hear my son's voice, even when he only had a few minutes between meetings, bills, or errands. Then the calls began to come, with little requests attached. "Mom, could we leave a few boxes in your basement for a month?" "Mum, can you watch Lily Friday? Just until Rebecca gets home." "Mom, I hate to ask, but could you help us with the car repair? We'll pay you back." Most of those things I gave gladly. That is what mothers do. We help before anyone has to beg. We make room. We stretch money. We say, "Don't worry about it," even when we probably should. But a favor can become a habit if nobody remembers it was kindness in the first place. Daniel was not a bad man. I need to say that clearly. He was tired. His business never fully recovered after those early mistakes, and I think he carried a shame he did not know where to put. He wanted to feel like the head of his household, but when money was short, he started reaching for control anywhere he could find it. The first time they took something without asking, it was only a key. Daniel said he wanted a spare in case something happened to me. He said it with that careful voice adult children use when they want you to feel old enough to be managed, but not offended enough to refuse. I gave it to him because I thought it meant concern. Then, one afternoon, I came home from the grocery store and found Daniel in my garage, stacking plastic bins against Paul's old workbench. "Did I forget you were coming?" I asked. He smiled like I was the one being silly. "No, Mom, I just used the key, figured it was easier." That word again. Easier. After that, Rebecca started making suggestions. She thought the guest room would look better with lighter curtains. She said my kitchen drawers were not very functional. and rearranged them while I was outside watering the mums. She told me the old family photographs in the hallway made the house feel crowded. Rebecca was not always unkind. She sent birthday cards on time and remembered what kind of tea I drank. But she had a way of improving things until the people inside them disappeared. None of it sounded cruel if you heard one sentence at a time. That was the trouble. It came wrapped in helpfulness. But slowly, my home started feeling like a place everyone had opinions about, while I was the only one expected to ask permission before changing anything. Still, I kept setting the table. I kept opening the door. I kept taking the cranberry bowl down from the cabinet. Because that bowl remembered a time when love did not have to be managed. That cranberry bowl was never just a bowl to me. I know how that sounds. At 72, you understand that younger people sometimes think older women get attached to things because we cannot let go. They see a cabinet full of dishes and call it clutter. They see an old serving bowl and wonder why anyone would care if it matched the tablecloth. But that bowl had been in my hands through nearly every season of my marriage. Paul bought it, our third year in the house, when Daniel was still small enough to fall asleep with his cheek pressed against my knee. We had gone into a little antique shop after church, not to buy anything, just to look. Money was tight then. The mortgage was new, the car needed tires, and I was cutting coupons from the Sunday paper like it was a second job. I saw the bowl first. Deep red glass, not fancy, but warm somehow, like it held candlelight even in the daytime. I touched the rim and put it back because I knew better. Paul noticed. That evening, after Daniel was asleep, Paul came into the kitchen with the bowl wrapped in newspaper. He looked almost embarrassed. "Couldn't leave it there," he said. "It looked like Thanksgiving." I fussed at him for spending money we did not have, but not very hard. He knew I loved it. I knew he loved seeing me love it. From then on, that bowl sat in the center of our Thanksgiving table. Cranberry sauce, orange slices, sometimes sugared pecans if we were feeling grand. Paul always carried it with both hands, like it was heavier than glass. The year he bought the Lisbon travel guide, he tapped the rim of that bowl and smiled. "Someday," he said, "we'll put this on a table in Lisbon." I laughed because it sounded impossible. Mothers laugh that way sometimes, when a dream feels too pretty to trust. So when Rebecca wrote that the bowl looked dated in pictures, it landed somewhere deep and quiet inside me. She was not trying to break my heart. That almost made it worse. To her, it was just an old dish that did not fit the picture she had in her head. To me, it was Paul's hands, our lean years, our first real home. And every Thanksgiving I had kept going after he was gone. I opened the cabinet that morning and touched the cool red glass. For the first time, I wondered whether the bowl still belonged on their table at all. While I stood there, my phone buzzed again. Rebecca had sent a document, not a message, a document. At the top, in neat bold letters, it said, "Thanksgiving plan." Under that was a seating chart, color-coded by family group. My dining room table was drawn like a little rectangle, with names placed around it, as if she had measured the room herself. There were notes in the margin. Move sideboard to hallway. Use rented white dishes. Put coats in Maggie's bedroom. Remove framed photos from wall behind table for cleaner pictures. I read that last line 3 times. Those framed photos were not decorations. They were Paul holding Daniel as a baby, Lily with missing front teeth, my mother standing in that same dining room with a flower handprint on her apron. Rebecca did not see a family wall. She saw clutter behind her photographs. Then came the grocery list. 2 turkeys, 5 pounds of potatoes, green beans, rolls, pies, coffee, half and half, sparkling cider, disposable containers, extra trash bags. At the bottom she had written, "Maggie, maybe you can start shopping early so it's not too much at once." As if that made it kinder. I was still reading when Daniel called again. "Mom, did Rebecca send the plan?" She did. Good. She's really trying to take some pressure off you. I looked at the list that somehow gave me more work than ever and said, I can see she put thought into it. He chuckled. That's Rebecca. She likes things organized. There was a pause, the kind people use when they are about to make a request sound like a favor. And after dinner, he said, I thought maybe we could talk about some future planning. Nothing heavy. Just house stuff, emergency paperwork, that kind of thing, since everyone will already be there. My hand tightened around the phone. Everyone? I asked. Well, family, he said quickly. It's good to have support, in case you get overwhelmed. I stared at the cranberry bowl through the cabinet glass. Then Daniel said the sentence that stayed with me. It's just paperwork, Mum. We don't want you worrying about the house at your age. At my age. There are words that sound soft, but land hard. I knew part of Daniel was afraid. He had bills. He had a daughter nearing college age. He had a business that looked better from the outside than it felt from the inside. But fear does not give a grown man the right to turn his mother into a problem to be solved. I told him I had something in the oven and needed to go. That was a lie. My kitchen was cold, and so was I. After I hung up, I stayed at the kitchen table for a long while, with the phone still in my hand. The room was still, except for the refrigerator humming and the old wall clock ticking above the pantry door. That clock had been 5 minutes slow for almost 20 years, because Paul used to say punctual people missed all the interesting parts of life. I tried to smile at the memory, but it did not hold. I opened the drawer beside me, the one where I kept stamps, batteries, rubber bands, and things I did not know where else to put. Under a stack of old greeting cards was the Lisbon travel guide. The cover was faded at the edges. Paul's handwriting was still inside. Small blue circles around places he wanted us to see. A tile museum, a little restaurant near the water, a streetcar route he had marked with a star. Tucked inside the book was an anniversary card he had given me the year we were supposed to go. To Maggie, he had written, who has spent her whole life making a home for everyone else. Someday, I am taking you somewhere you do not have to cook. I pressed my fingers over those words. We had cancelled that trip because Daniel needed help. His business was struggling then, and Rebecca was pregnant with Lily. There were overdue bills, worried phone calls, and that look on my son's face that made me forget every plan I had ever made for myself. Paul did not complain. He wrote, "Next year," on the envelope and put the guide away. But next year never came. I sat there with that little book open and cried in the private way. Older women cry when there is nobody to comfort and nobody to explain it to. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just tears slipping down while my hands stayed folded in my lap. I was not crying over Lisbon alone. I was crying for every supper I made while tired, every check I wrote and called a gift, every holiday I hosted, while missing my husband so badly I had to grip the counter. Every time I told myself it was enough to be needed. Need is not the same as love. That was the sentence that finally settled in me. I wiped my face with a napkin, opened my laptop, and stared at the airline page I had visited 3 times that week. Boston to Lisbon. 1 seat left in the fare I could afford. My hand trembled a little when I clicked confirm. But after I did, I felt something I had not felt in years. Space. A small, clear space inside my chest. That was when I stopped waiting for them to ask what I wanted. But I also knew wanting something was not the same as protecting it. The next morning, I called an elder law attorney named Elaine Porter. Her office was above a small pharmacy on Main Street, the kind of place with narrow stairs and a brass nameplate by the door. I had written her number down months earlier, after a widow from church told me, "Maggie, don't wait until people start making decisions around you." At the time, I thought she was being dramatic. Now I understood exactly what she meant. Elaine was a woman about my daughter-in-law's age, but she did not speak to me like I was fragile. She shook my hand, offered coffee, and said, "Tell me what you're concerned about." So I did. Not all at once. Older women do not always know how to say, My family is starting to treat me like property. We say smaller things first. I told her Daniel had a key. I told her he had started talking about the house. I told her he wanted to discuss paperwork in front of relatives on Thanksgiving. I told her I was not confused, not helpless, and not ready to hand my life over because it would be easier for everyone else. Elaine listened without interrupting. Then she pulled out a legal pad and said, "Let's see what is actually in place." We reviewed my deed. The house was still solely in my name, just as Paul had left it. We looked over my will, my bank contacts, my medical directive, and an old power of attorney I had signed after Paul's first surgery years ago. I had nearly forgotten Daniel was listed on it. Elaine tapped that page gently. "This does not mean he owns anything," she said, "but it does give him authority in certain situations. If you no longer want that, we can revoke it properly." Properly. That word mattered to me. I did not want drama. I wanted things done right. By Monday morning, the first document was signed. I revoked Daniel's old power of attorney. I updated my medical directive. I asked for written copies. Elaine explained what could be completed that day and what would take a little time to file. She also helped me prepare a simple notice stating that no one had permission to use my home without my direct consent. When I got home, I placed the signed copy inside the blue folder beside my Lisbon confirmation. For the first time in years, my kitchen felt different. Not lonely. Guarded. Like a door inside me had finally been closed from the right side. I did not announce anything. I did not send a family message saying I had met with a lawyer. I did not tell Daniel his name had been removed from anything. A boundary does not always need a speech. Sometimes it only needs a signature, a copy, and a safe place to keep it. For the next few days, the Thanksgiving messages kept coming. Rebecca asked whether I had confirmed the rental chairs. I did not answer right away. Daniel asked if I had started buying the groceries. I wrote back, "Not yet." A cousin asked whether her boys could sleep in the guest room because hotels were so expensive this year. I let that one sit. That was new for me. I had always been quick to reassure people, quick to smooth things over, quick to say, "Of course," before I had even checked whether I had the strength to mean it. By Wednesday afternoon, Daniel noticed. He called twice. I did not answer the first time because I was at the locksmith, choosing a new keypad for the back door. I did not answer the second time because I was standing in my own kitchen, watching a young man in work boots remove the old lock from the side entrance. When Daniel called the third time, I picked up. "Mom," he said, "is everything okay?" His voice had that careful concern in it again, the kind that sounded soft until you heard the control underneath. "I'm fine," I said. "Rebecca says you haven't confirmed anything." "No, I haven't." There was a pause. "Well, I stopped by earlier," he said. "I was going to check the folding tables in the basement, but the code didn't work. I looked at the new keypad on the door. I changed it." Another pause, longer this time. "Mum, why would you change the code without telling me?" "For safety," I said. "But I'm your son." "I know who you are, Daniel." He gave a small laugh, but it had no warmth in it. "You're acting strange." I looked at the blue folder on the counter. They thought I had gone quiet. I had only gone careful. And Daniel's surprise told me something important. He had expected the key to work. That bothered me more than his question did. A key is a small thing until somebody believes they have a right to use it. Then it becomes something else. It becomes permission you never meant to give. 2 nights later, I was folding towels in the laundry room when my phone chimed. It was from Lily, my granddaughter. She was 16 then, old enough to understand more than adults gave her credit for, but still young enough to get caught in the middle. Her message said, "Grandma, I'm sorry. I think I sent that wrong." Underneath, it was part of a text thread. At first, I thought it was just more Thanksgiving planning. Rebecca's name was at the top, and Daniel's replies were below. I saw my name, then the word house, and I sat down on the little bench by the dryer. Rebecca had written, "We need to talk to her while everyone is together." If it's just you, she'll get emotional and put it off again. Daniel replied, I know, after dinner is best. Then Rebecca wrote, make it about helping her, not taking over. My hands went cold. Daniel's answer came next. She won't make a scene on Thanksgiving. I read that sentence once. Then again. Then a third time, slower. It did not say, Mom might need help. It did not say, let's ask her what she wants. It said they had already studied my habits, my politeness, my grief, my fear of embarrassing anyone at the table Paul built with his own hands. They were not just planning dinner. They were planning the room, the witnesses, the pressure. And the part of me that still wanted to excuse my son got very quiet. That sentence did not make me angry first. It made me clear. I did not call Lily and ask questions she should not have to answer. I simply wrote back, It's all right, sweetheart. Thank you for telling me. Then I walked to the small printer in the den and printed the messages. The paper came out warm in my hand, plain black words on white sheets, but it felt heavier than it looked. I slid the copies into the blue folder behind Elaine Porter's card. I still did not confront Daniel. Not yet. Because now I knew exactly what kind of conversation he wanted. And I wanted him to have one too. Daniel came over the following Sunday afternoon with Rebecca beside him, both of them wearing the bright, careful expressions people use when they have already decided you are the problem. I saw their car pull into the driveway from the front window. For a moment, I thought about not answering. Then I remembered something Paul used to say when a bill came in that worried us. Open it, Maggie. Bad news doesn't get better in an envelope. So I opened the door. Daniel kissed my cheek and stepped inside before I invited him. Rebecca followed with a tote bag over her shoulder and a folder of her own tucked under her arm. Hi, Maggie, she said, looking past me into the dining room. I brought the updated table layout. I think if we angle the table slightly, the room will photograph better. I looked at my dining room wall, at Paul's picture in the silver frame. Photograph better, I repeated. She softened her voice. I just want the day to look nice. Daniel's been under so much pressure, and I thought one good family holiday might help everyone breathe. That was the trouble with Rebecca. She could make control sound like care if you were tired enough to believe her. Daniel cleared his throat. Mom, we're not here to upset you. That is usually what people say right before they upset you. We sat at the kitchen table. My blue folder was not there. I had put it in my bedroom drawer before they arrived. I wanted this conversation clean. I wanted to see what Daniel would say when there was nothing in front of him except his mother. Rebecca began talking about rented dishes again. Daniel interrupted her gently, as if he were the reasonable one. Let's not overwhelm Mom, he said. Then he turned to me. I know you've been a little sensitive about Thanksgiving. Sensitive. Not ignored, not used. Sensitive. I've been thinking, he continued. Maybe before the holiday rush, we should take care of the emergency paperwork. Just basic things. It would be easier if you sign now, then we can all relax Thursday. I folded my hands on the table. Daniel, I said, did you ask me if I wanted Thanksgiving here? He blinked. Well, Mom, it's what we always do. That wasn't my question. Rebecca shifted in her chair. Daniel sighed. Everybody expects it, and you love hosting. I looked at my son, then really looked at him. His hair had more grey than I remembered. He looked tired, worried even. For one small second, I almost softened. Then I remembered the text. She won't make a scene on Thanksgiving. Being used to something, I said quietly, is not the same as choosing it. Daniel stared at me, as if I had spoken in a language he did not know. Rebecca gave a small laugh, not cruel exactly, but dismissive. Maggie, no one is using you. We're trying to keep the family together. I stood and walked them to the door. I had one more thing to show him, but not in my kitchen. Thanksgiving morning came grey and cold, the kind of New England morning when the windows look silver and every bare branch seems to be holding its breath. By then, my house was locked, the thermostat was lowered, and the blue folder was no longer on my kitchen table. It was in my carry-on bag. So was Paul's cranberry glass bowl, wrapped in 2 sweaters and tucked between my nightgown and a paperback book. I had been afraid airport security might ask about it, but no one did. Maybe they see stranger things than an old widow carrying a serving bowl across the ocean. My plane had landed in Lisbon just after sunrise. I was tired in that floating way you feel after a night without real sleep. But when I stepped outside and smelled salt, air, and coffee, something inside me loosened. Back home, Daniel pulled into my driveway a little before 9. Mrs. Alvarez told me later that he arrived with Rebecca and the kind of confidence that makes a person walk fast. Their trunk was full of folding chairs, grocery bags, flowers, and 2 rented tablecloths still in plastic. Rebecca had a garment bag over one arm, probably for whatever outfit she wanted in the photographs. Daniel went to the side door first. The old code did not work. He tried again. Then he went to the front door and used his key. That did not work either. Mrs. Alvarez watched from her front window until the knocking started. I had asked her not to involve herself unless Daniel became loud. She was a retired nurse, 5 feet tall, and harder to intimidate than any attorney I had ever met. By the 3rd phone call, she walked across the lawn in her winter coat, with the sealed envelope in her hand. Daniel was standing on my porch, phone pressed to his ear. "Mrs. Alvarez," he said, trying to keep his voice low. "Do you know where my mother is?" She handed him the envelope. "She asked me to give you this." Inside was my letter, only half a page. "Daniel, no Thanksgiving gathering was approved at my home. No one has permission to enter. Please do not attempt to use old keys, codes, or family pressure as a substitute for consent. Any discussion about my house, my medical decisions, or my legal documents will go through Elaine Porter from now on. Mom." Behind it was Elaine's formal notice. It stated, in plain language, that Daniel's prior power of attorney had been revoked, that he had no authority over my home, and that unauthorized entry would not be treated as a family misunderstanding. That was all. No threats, no performance, no dramatic speech. Just the truth, written clearly enough that even embarrassment could not argue with it. My phone rang while I was sitting at a small cafe table in Lisbon. Paul's bowl was safe in my rented room upstairs. I answered. "Mom," Daniel said, breathless and angry, "where are you?" I looked at the tiled buildings across the street, blue and white in the morning light. "Lisbon," I said. There was silence. Then, quietly, I added, "You reserved my house without asking me. I reserved my life without apologizing." After I said it, I did not hang up. I let the silence sit between us, because for once, Daniel had to stand inside it instead of handing it to me. "Mom," he said finally, "lower this time. People are coming. What am I supposed to tell them?" I looked down at my coffee cup. It was small and white, nothing like the heavy mugs at home. Around me, people were speaking Portuguese. Spoons were touching saucers, and somewhere nearby, a church bell rang. Life was moving on, in a place where nobody expected me to baste a turkey or smile through disrespect. "You can tell them the truth," I said. "You planned Thanksgiving at a house you never asked to use." He breathed hard into the phone. "You're embarrassing me." "No, Daniel," I said. "I'm letting you feel embarrassed." That was the last thing I said before I ended the call. The voicemail started an hour later. The first one was angry. He said I had made him look foolish in front of everyone. The second was more defensive. He said Rebecca was only trying to help. By the third, his voice had changed. He said he did not understand why I had gone so far. I did not answer those messages that day. Mrs. Alvarez texted me later, short and practical as always. "They left. No damage," Rebecca cried in the car. Daniel looked pale. Some relatives called Daniel, some called each other. A few called me, but I let them go to voicemail too. From what Lily told me afterward, the story began shifting before noon. People asked whether I had been sick, whether I had forgotten, whether I had ever agreed. That last question mattered. Lily texted me just before evening. Grandma, I'm sorry. I didn't know they hadn't asked you. I read that message 3 times, the way I had read Daniel's first one. Then I wrote back, I know, sweetheart. You are not responsible for grown people's choices. That little message did not fix everything, but it reminded me that not every branch on a family tree is rotten. Some are just young, bent by the wind, still deciding which way to grow. I carried that thought with me through Lisbon. That first evening, I went back to the little apartment I had rented, took Paul's cranberry glass bowl from my suitcase, and set it on the small wooden table by the window. For a moment, I just stood there looking at it. The late sun came through the glass and turned it warm red, the way candlelight used to on our Thanksgiving table. I did not have turkey. I did not have sweet potatoes or rolls or 3 different pies cooling on the counter. I had a bowl of soup from a cafe downstairs, a piece of crusty bread, and a small custard tart wrapped in paper. I set one place at the table, 1 spoon, 1 napkin, 1 glass of water. Then I opened Paul's old letter. To Maggie, he had written, who has spent her whole life making a home for everyone else. Someday, I am taking you somewhere you do not have to cook. I laughed then, but it came out with tears in it. Well, Paul, I whispered, I finally made it. The next morning, I walked streets we had only seen in pictures, blue tiles on buildings, laundry hanging from balconies, older women carrying shopping bags with the same steady patience I recognized in myself. I sat near the water and let the wind mess up my hair. No one needed me. No one was waiting for me to serve. No one was measuring my love by how much I could give. When I returned home 2 weeks later, my house was quiet. But quiet did not frighten me anymore. It felt like ownership. The locks were still changed. The blue folder was still in my desk. Elaine Porter had handled the messages Daniel sent about talking things through. I told her I was willing to speak with him, when he was ready to speak to me as his mother, not as an obstacle. Lily and I kept texting. She asked about Lisbon. I sent her a picture of the bowl in the sunlight. Daniel and I did speak eventually. Not that week. Not while he was angry. Not while he still thought my peace was something he could negotiate. When we finally talked, his voice was smaller. He did not give the perfect apology people imagine in stories. Real people rarely do. But he did say, I should have asked. That was a beginning, not a repair. A beginning. That year, my table was not crowded. But for the first time in a long time, I sat down without feeling invisible. That is something I wish every woman my age could understand before she has to learn it the hard way. A full house is not always a loving house. A crowded table does not always mean you are cherished. Sometimes the loneliest place in the world is the chair at the head of a family table, where everybody eats what you made and no one asks if you are tired. I still loved Daniel. A mother does not stop loving her child because he disappoints her. Love is not a light switch. It is more like an old lamp in the corner, still glowing even when the room has changed. But I no longer confused love with permission. My home is still full of memories. Paul's picture still sits in the hallway. The maple tree still drops, leaves faster than I can rake them. The cranberry bowl is back in my cabinet now, but it no longer waits for people who do not respect what it means. And my house has something it did not have before. Boundaries. That word can sound cold until you have lived too long without it. A boundary is not a locked heart. It is a door with a handle on your side too. Choosing peace can hurt, especially when the people hurting you are the same people you once packed lunches for, prayed over, and stayed awake worrying about. But being hurt does not mean being helpless. I did not leave because I stopped being a mother. I left because I remembered I was still a woman. And a mother's love is not permission to use her. Have you ever had to walk away to protect your peace?